All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome back, everyone, to Perk Up Thursdays. We had July off. We're starting again in August. And I'm very excited today that we have several students from the Weibling clinic at the University of Nebraska Law Center. And they're going to talk about the services that they offer. And but first of all, we want to just go ahead and introduce ourselves and a little bit about ourselves, and then we'll get started. Well, Ryan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Ryan Brungard. I'm a student attorney at the Weibling Clinic.
I'm Gina Shin. I'm also a student attorney in Entrepreneurship Clinic.
And I'm Avery Chisholm, and I'm also a student attorney.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. And as I was saying right before Luke started recording, we have many clients that come in for initial coaching that want to start a business but really don't have a plan at all. And we refer them to the Weibling Clinic because of the services that they offer, that it's free of charge, and that they can get help where they need, and if there's other direction that they need to go to, that they can go down that road. So I will go ahead and let you start, Avery, and thank you so much for coming today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So to kind of give a layout for what we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about different entities that you can form, mainly sole proprietorships, general partnerships, and corporations.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about LLCs and nonprofits.
Yeah, I will then talk about the intellectual property because we have a lot of clients that have a trademark or kind of like trade secret kind of intellectual property. So we figured it's a really, really important, especially for small and medium-sized business. So we'll talk about that. And
we also have some resources that we want to discuss with you guys, and we have a little bit of a handout that we'll give you at the end that just kind of outlines a little bit more of what the clinic does and what they can do for you.
All right, so starting with the sole proprietorship, we're going to be using an example of Bob and his desire to start his own ice cream company. Now, Bob has a passion for selling ice cream. But he doesn't really know what he wants to do with his business. He doesn't really know where to initially go. Bob may simply just want a simple structure for his business choice if he only just wants to sell ice cream. He may decide to then form a sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship can be noted as one of the simplest and easiest business entities that you can form. There's in fact no formal filing process to create one. You merely need to just start engaging in business as your company. And sole proprietorships are noted to have a very simple structure because at the end of the day, you as the owner are going to have full control over your business. You're the one who makes all the primary decisions. However, it is important to note that sole proprietorships do not have a liability shield. Now, a liability shield protects your personal assets in the event that your business is unable to pay its debts or legal obligations. So, because a sole proprietorship does not have one, your personal assets could be pursued to pay off debt if your business is unable to pay these. As an example, let's assume Bob wants to buy an ice cream truck and he decides to take out a loan. If in the future he's unable to make payments on that loan, he starts to default, his personal assets may be at risk of being seized in order to cover that. Additionally, another con that we have to kind of look out for in sole proprietorships is the possibility of self-employment taxes. Now, sole proprietorships are taxed as a pass-through entity. Basically, whatever profits or losses your sole proprietorship generates, you're just going to pass them through and report them on your individual income statement. However, for many new business owners, they run into troubles with the IRS just because they fail to pay their self-employment taxes. And this is an area that we recommend definitely seeing an accountant if you're planning to form a business, just to make sure you're properly filing your tax returns. All right, moving on into the next business that we may be able to form. It's going to be the general partnership. Under this scenario, it's going to be Bob and his partner, Sally. They decide that they both want to open up this ice cream shop together. However, they may feel like they want something a little bit simpler and not as complex as some of the other entities that we'll talk about today. A general partnership, very much like a sole proprietorship, is very easy to form. There is no formal filing requirement. You merely need 2 or more joint owners to start engaging in business to create a general partnership. However, because there are multiple parties involved in partnerships, there are going to be default rules of equality. Basically, each partner by default is going to have equal right or equal access to the profits and losses of the partnership. They're also going to have equal authority to engage in business as they see fit without needing the consent of their other partners. Now, while these default rules do exist, they can be modified by a partnership agreement. This partnership agreement is just going to be a contract between the partners where you can allocate the rights and responsibilities of the partner, as well as change up the allocation of profits and losses. However, general partnerships do run into some of the same cons as a sole proprietorship, mainly being the no liability shield. Now, it operates very much the same way as a sole proprietorship. However, it is also extended a little bit further. Generally speaking, a partner is personally liable for the obligations of a partnership. Now, what this means is we could have a situation where Bob and Sally are disagreeing on whether or not they should take out a loan to get a storefront for their ice cream store. Sally is for it, Bob is against it. Sally, with her authority as a partner, decides to take out the loan, and Bob doesn't even sign on to it. Now, if they default on this loan in the future, the partnership's assets could be seized. If they still can't cover back the loan, Sally's personal assets could be seized. And then additionally, if there's still remaining debt owed, Bob's personal assets could be seized, even though he did not sign on or agree to take on this loan. Additionally, without creating a partnership agreement, general partnerships these default rules are going to apply no matter what. It is regardless of your intent when forming a partnership, you're going to need to create these partnership agreements to create binding rules. This also creates a problem for partnerships where 2 partners may go in with an informal or oral promise as to how they want to run their partnership. However, as the relationship sours due to business problems, one partner may want to step in and claim equal rights, even though that was not the promise that they had to begin with. Additionally, the general partnership can accidentally be formed. You may have the intent to create a different business or a different entity type. However, if you fail to complete the formation process, your company could wind up being considered a general partnership. This can create massive repercussions, especially if you're acting under the belief that you have a liability shield when in fact you do not.
So I'm going to hop in and talk to you guys a little bit about limited liability companies, or as you guys probably know them, LLCs. So let's say Bob and Sally are starting to really worry about this lack of a liability shield because they're interested in buying a storefront or they're interested in buying an ice cream truck, and they know they're going to have to get loans and they're going to face other liabilities such as slip and falls or a wreck, who knows. They might decide to form an LLC. So an LLC, there's no restriction on the number of members that you can have. So an LLC can be a lot bigger than just 2 people. It can be as big as you want. It has a flexible structure in company management, so as long as that arrangement is written in a contract, you can pretty much do whatever you want with an LLC. There's a lot less paperwork and formalities in comparison to a corporation, but you still get that liability protection. Gina will talk to you a little bit more about that protection in a minute. There are some cons to an LLC though. Compared to a general partnership or just a sole proprietorship, there is some expense to forming an LLC. There will be some filing fees associated with the state and maybe an attorney if you speak to them about the agreement. And then it's also more difficult to transfer ownership in comparison to a corporation. So the LLC members would actually have to be completely changed on the filings and on the agreements.
You just click somewhere on the PowerPoint mouse. That should do it.
Okay, so in sum, limited liability company provides the owner the limited liability protection and pass-through taxation. So limited liability protection is one of like the main criteria that like people goes with a LLC form. So owners are not personally responsible for a company's like debt or liabilities, and likewise, if an owner personally incur like his personal debt, then the creditor cannot go after LLC's asset. But any active participation in wrongdoing is not protected, so it's not absolute like protection. Meaning that if Bob just put like some like foul ingredients in his ice cream, then he can be like personally liable for damages. But to get this like a proper protection, you need to separate the LLC's assets from the personal assets. It can be very critical if you are sued by like creditors, and like a court may see that like you are not actually the LLC information. And the another like benefits from LLC is that like it provide a pass-through taxation, meaning that it kind of similar to general partnership and sole proprietorship, so you don't have to pay like separate income tax under the business form.
All right, moving on into the corporation. A corporation is going to be one of the most complex entities that you can form. The complexity comes behind the little chart that we have kind of up there. The corporation is going to be owned by shareholders. The corporation is going to issue shares of stock that the shareholders then own and give them a right to profit distributions. However, these shareholders are not in control or managing the company. In fact, it is the board of directors that manages the corporation. They're the ones who are going to vote to approve all substantial decisions in the corporation. The shareholders are going to be in charge of electing the board of directors. And then once the board of directors approves on a vote, they're then going to pass their decision along to the corporation's officers. The officers are then going to carry out those orders and kind of move the corporation forward. Some of the pros that come with setting up a corporation, it's going to give you an inflexible business structure. Now, if you're looking to bring in a wide group of investors and you want the rules of operation for your corporation to stay the same, it's very easy to do. With the articles of incorporation and bylaws in corporations, you're able to see to it that they stay the same no matter what. It's going to be, you can make it a very complicated and difficult process in order to start changing your rules of operation. Likewise, corporations allow you to attract a wide group of investors. This is mainly due to the liability shield for shareholders. Shareholders, the only risk that shareholders have is how much money they want to put into the corporation. That's the extent that they could lose. However, corporations do have some cons to them, mainly being the inflexible business structure. For most small businesses, you need flexibility in order to change what you're doing or how you operate. You may think of a rule that you want to run your company with that sounds good on paper at first, but in practice it becomes detrimental to your company in the long run, and you'd rather not deal with the formalities and complexities of trying to change these. You'd want something easier and simpler. Likewise, corporations do come with a lot of paperwork and formalities. You're going to have biennial reporting, or every other year you'll have to file in certain reports with the Secretary of State. You're going to have periodic meetings and give out keep recordings of your minutes. This can be a lot of time or effort for small corporations that they may not have the resources in order to adequately handle. And it may be something to consider of converting into a corporation in the long run, but for now starting with a different entity structure. I would also like to talk about corporate taxes. Mainly, I'm going to be talking about two different types of corporations. When you're applying to get your employer identification number from Form SS4, you'll get the choice to choose what type of corporation you'd like the IRS to recognize you as. This can lead to different tax treatment. The first corporation is going to be the C corporation, or more the standard corporation. This is the one that is subject to double taxation, meaning that the income that the corporation generates is going to be taxed once, and then if they distribute any profits to the shareholders are then going to have to report and pay taxes on those, leading to double taxation. The second corporation is going to be the S corporation, which is the S corporation is not subject to double taxation. Instead, it is taxed as a pass-through entity. The profits are just going to be passed along to the shareholders and only taxed once. However, there are going to be several requirements in order for the IRS to recognize you as an S corporation. Some of these requirements include having no more than 100 shareholders and only having one class of stock.
So let's talk about a nonprofit corporation then. Ryan mentioned that corporations might be the most complex structure you can choose, and I raise him to nonprofit. So a nonprofit corporation has a very similar governance as a corporation. It's ran by a board of directors, but the owners of a nonprofit are the general public. And that's because a nonprofit has to be run with the purpose of benefiting the general public in a number of different ways. So a lot of times people also hear nonprofit and automatically think, oh, well, they're tax exempt, they don't have to pay taxes. That's not always true. You have to file a separate large form known as the Form 1023. Now there's a Form 1023 Easy that kind of simplifies the process a little bit, but this is still a long, drawn-out process to get tax exempt status. Tax exempt status also doesn't mean you don't pay any taxes. It really just means you don't pay federal income tax, but you're still subject to sales tax, property tax, and things like that. Some pros of a nonprofit are that there are a lot of default rules, just like with a corporation, but some of these rules can be adjusted to fit your corporation in a better way. However, I will say that the rules for a nonprofit are much more strict and rigorous than just a corporation themselves, so you'll face a little bit more difficulty. A nonprofit also has the same liability protection that a corporation does, and when you're seeking donors, it might be beneficial to be a nonprofit with tax exempt status because your donors will get a tax deduction form when they donate and will be able to deduct that money from their taxes, which everyone loves. Another pro of a nonprofit may be that you have to establish a clear mission and purpose before you get started. So your board of directors, the general public, and any other people associated with your nonprofit will really know what you stand for and what your day-to-day is going to look like before you get started, so that there's not a lot of muddy water associated. Like I said, there are several cons associated with forming a nonprofit, and that's, the costly and lengthy startup. It's the false associations people make with nonprofits that you're automatically tax exempt when that's a whole nother process, along with the documentation required. So just like a corporation, you have to keep meeting minutes and all of those records. But if you have tax exempt status, you're going to be required to keep even more documentation. You're going to have to make more reports to the IRS to just assure them that you're operating properly and that you deserve to remain tax exempt, because they can take that back if you're acting inappropriately. And a nonprofit, most of their documentation has to be publicly available. So if anyone is super interested in what you're doing or they think something fishy is going on, you're gonna have to provide these documents for their review. This is a little bit of a look. These two slides are a little bit of a look at the requirements that you have to fulfill before you can really establish an entity and start doing business in Nebraska. If you guys have any big questions about this process, we can discuss that more in the Q&A section. We don't really want to drag us down with this. And likewise, here's a little bit of the fees associated with forming an entity, and we can discuss that in depth. It's a little bit less than about $200 to form any sort of entity in Nebraska, and there could be other fees associated with reserving a business name and filing your biannual reports. So let's talk summary. We just kind of learned a lot of information very quickly. So let's think about Bob. So Bob, when he started business by himself, he formed a sole proprietorship. So he had complete and total ownership and control over the business. He faced pass-through taxation because the entity and himself are one. So all of his taxes are reported on his own individual tax forms. And this formation was automatic, and there's no liability protection. When Bob and Sally started doing business together, they formed a general partnership, which was formed automatically when they started doing business. They have no liability protection. They also face pass-through taxation, and they face those default rules of equality, which mean they have an equal share of management, ownership, and profits and losses unless there is a partnership agreement put into place. And then when Bob and Sally expanded and they searched for investors because they wanted to start a storefront or a chain of storefronts, they became a corporation. This was not automatic, but it required a lot of formation requirements like filing the articles of incorporation. They faced some strict rules and regulations, but they did attract those investors. They're managed by a board of directors. They're owned by shareholders, depending on the amount of shares owned. And yeah, and so then Bob and Sally decide, running an ice cream business isn't all it's chalked up to be, but there's a lot of interest from young entrepreneurs. So they decide their new purpose is going to be raising the next generation of entrepreneurs, and they start a little bit of a school to train these students. So all the profits they make off the school are going back into the school. It's a nonprofit for a charitable purpose. They are owned by the public. They are managed by a board of directors and officers. They have 501c3 tax exempt status, and they do have a limited liability protection. And they formed this entity by filing articles of incorporation along with several other formalities, and they do face some strict rules and regulations. So lastly, we'll talk about Bob and Sally when they established their LLC for protection from liabilities when they opened their first storefront. The ownership of an LLC is dependent on percentage or units, and this is outlined in the operating agreement. The management structure is flexible, which is also outlined in the operating agreement, and they can face pass-through taxation or double taxation. Gina told you a little bit more about pass-through taxation associated with an LLC, but you can also elect to have C Corp taxation, which is the double taxation. And they do have a liability shield or liability protection. And they formed this entity by filing a certificate of organization with the Secretary of State of Nebraska. So when you're forming an entity, the best place to start obviously is hiring an attorney. But some things that you can do before meeting with an attorney are to refine your business plan and goals. And refining your business plan and goals will just really help guide you and your attorney to the next steps of what entity to form, when to form that entity, or if there are any other things that you need to do. Also, you can come up with a business name. This is a super important step that many people overlook, but your business name is really important to the success. So when you're coming up with a business name, you should just kind of Google that name first. See what pops up. You don't want to come up with a name that's going to be overshadowed by a big business somewhere else, or by a movie, or by some other famous thing associated with that name. And you can also run a name with the Secretary of State of Nebraska or whatever state you're forming your entity in, just to make sure that that name's available to you.
Okay, now I'm gonna talk about the intellectual property. So what is the intellectual property? So big definition from World Trade Organization is anything creations of the mind. So it's not like a Bob's ice cream truck or like ice cream equipment. It's not something like a Bob's ice cream recipe. It's something you cannot touch, but you know that it's there. But it requires appropriate measure or like a certain steps to keep this like protection under like in place. So I'm gonna talk about this like in more detail in the types of like IP and the measures you need to take, or like a way which IP protection law you wanted to choose. So in a big picture, there are like two types of intellectual property. The patents and copyrights are to promote any invention or like creative art. So in one hand, it incentivizes any inventors and creators by giving some exclusive right to make a use or like just copy or like doing things, anything they created. But on the other hand, like the whole purpose of this patent and copyright is to benefit general public. So in the end, you have to return those rights into the public. And the other like types of intellectual property is to prevent unfair competition in the market. So trademark and trade secrets are to protect of course the owners of the IP, but also like it protects the consumers from confusing. But on the other hand, it also protects competitors from like too much restrictions on them. So I prepared a little bit of a quiz. So I used like 4 types of IP, like patents, copyrights, and trademark and trade secrets. So I prepared like 4 like famous like IPs in here. So anyone recognize those photos? and guess which like IP it belongs to?
So I would say it's an iPhone.
Yeah. It's a protected under design patent. You've seen like this famous case over like Samsung and like iPhone about this patent. And what about this? Do you recognize this mark? Yes. So just by singing this mark, you automatically identify that it comes from Nike. So that's what Trademark does. So it identifies the products from that like specific source. And yes, Tiffany actually trademarks this color of their box. So you can actually trademark anything like giving like some kind of like a feeling. Oh, it's like associated with like some kind of like manufacturer. Then you can trademark. And what about this? So okay, so Mickey Mouse is copyrighted, and it's almost like it's about time to like expire now. What about Coca-Cola's recipe? Yes, so it's trade secret. So they've been protecting this recipe so well, and for over 120 years, they haven't been disclosed in the market. So patent, there are like several factors when you like decide to get like a patent protection. So like first, there should be market. If Bob came up with this ice cream recipe that can last 1 hour in direct sunlight, he can, well, like besides that, like if it's like a patentable like recipe, but it should be market. There should be market. If a customer doesn't want to buy like that kind of ice cream, then there's no market, and like it's just like expensive paper. But if there are like customers, patents will definitely give him the market advantage in 1 hour lasting ice cream market, and the next thing is like he need to see if it's even if it's feasible to get the patent. The patentability is governed by very complex patent law, and there is actually special patent bar for lawyers too. So lawyers need to pass the bar to practice patent prosecution. But if you get the patent, you can monetize it in different way. You can manufacture it by yourself, and you can license to the manufacturer who have a bit capacity to produce that kind of like products. And it also like you can use that patent to raise money as a collateral. So it gives a lot of like options and like a market advantage. But it also creates another like complex issue. If Bob and Sally came up with this ice cream recipe, who contributed which part of the patents, kind of like puzzle this like when you figure out like sharing the profits and everything. So also you have to think about if there's another viable option, because like patent is really like expensive and long process. It can take usually like 15K to like 20K to get the patent, and it can usually takes like 26 and 30 months, but it can go up to like 10 years to get the patents. And during those time, market can change, so like there is no longer like a demand for that kind of product. And like also like if you wanna get the patent, you need to disclose the full information into public. So that's another like point to think about. So like back to Perk, so trade secret can be some other viable option to patent. So any like formula, recipe, and practices like those subjects having economic value from being secret can be like protected under trade secret. But another caveat is that owner should take a reasonable effort to keep it secret, like meaning like a confidential agreement with the employees, or like just limit the access to the secret to like essential employees only, and like surveillance cameras on ordinary like security measure, and proper password, like no 1, 2, 3, 4 passwords for any access. And if your trade secret is a kind of a thing that can be discovered through like R&D or reverse engineering, some like law firm like measure, that does not include like industrial espionage or like breaking into the board you secure your secret. Like if that's the case, court will like award you the damage of losing the secret. And copyright protects original work of authorship fixed in a tangible medium of expression, meaning that like, it doesn't protect any ideas or concepts, something like not fixed within like papers or like paintings or like computer program. Yeah, they are not like protected. And another thing about copyright is that it gives only like very narrow protection. So like it's kind of like, on the other hand, like you need to promote the art, but you also have a First Amendment. Like people need to like freely speak about like whatever they wanted to say. Like it kind of like overlaps with the First Amendment. So copyright usually gives very narrow protection. But another like good point advantage of copyright is that you only need to register when you decide to like sue somebody for infringing. So, and like it doesn't even require any like huge creativity. Like the slides also can be like protected under copyright law. And lastly, the trademark. So almost like every client we had in the clinic had trademark issue. So anything distinctive words, phrase, logo, symbols, those are like defined as a trademark. And shape, sound, fragrance, and like color, like Tiffany's fox, can be is under trade dress, but they also can be like registered. So you need to use in commerce those kind of words like trademark and trade dress, and consumers should be able to identify by those kind of trademark with your like product. So, but like without registering to federal registration, so states just provide a limited protection. Overall, like a trademark protects trademarks owners like goodwill associated with that like trademarked goods and services, and also like they protect consumers from confused by like other competitors like similar logos or trademark. And also it kind of have a restriction that you cannot register like everything for a trademark, because if Bob came up with a creamy for his ice cream for like trademark, then it kind of restricts competitors from like this most widely used descriptive word. So it also like protects competitors from like too much restriction. So in some, like they promote fair competition in the market. So Ryan's gonna give like a summary of the IP.
All right, so to just kind of go over what we talked about in IP, we started off talking about patents. Basically, these don't last that long. You can only get 20 years for protection with them. You will have to disclose what you're trying to get a patent on, and for the most part, it's a very long and expensive process in order to get it, but you can get exclusive market rights to whatever you're able to patent. Looking at trade secrets, trade secrets can potentially last forever, but so you do have to take reasonable measures to keep them a secret. Once they start becoming public knowledge, you may actually lose trade secret protections, and it's not expensive to register trade secret protection. Again, you just need to maintain the privacy on it.
Okay. And then we're going to talk a little bit about copyrights and trademarks. So copyrights, like, you don't have to register for a copyright until you're ready to sue someone for infringement on that copyright, and it can't protect against fair use. So if someone's using that art or that copyright in a fair way, there's no protection against that. So the protection's pretty narrow, and it has to be over a tangible mark. So something that's in writing, in sound, something like that, not an idea. It has to actually already be completely manufactured, completely done. A trademark is kind of the same way. It protects logos, words, symbols, colors, things like that. You do have to register to get full protection That registration is not extremely expensive, it's not extremely complex, and you can get some protection just from common law, just from using that trademark in the real world. This is to protect you from other people infringing on that kind of market you've established, so when people are associating a certain thing with your business, that deserves protection. And there's restrictions on certain trademarks, so if a word is too descriptive or it's overused in the market, there's not going to be a lot of protection there.
All right, so kind of going into the resources that we have, we first of all want to go over some like do's and don'ts when starting your business. Always, we believe you should get appropriate help. This means seeing the proper lawyers, seeing accountants, making sure that you have the right that you're seeing the right people and getting the right resources. Additionally, it's always beneficial to search with the Secretary of State or to just start Googling things before. You'd be surprised with some of the information that you can find, especially if you, like your business name, for example. You may have an idea for a great business name, but it took 5 minutes of looking with the Secretary of State and you found 3 businesses that are running with it in this state. You may want to change it now. We also heavily promote engaging in strategic planning, especially when it comes to which entity you want to form, intellectual property, and any agreements you want. Obviously, with the entities that you form, you could have massive repercussions by not having a liability shield, and that liability shield could come in and save you. For intellectual property, they take a lot of time and money, and they may just simply not be in the best interest of your business to pursue these. Otherwise, or it might be vice versa, where it is critical that you claim your intellectual property rights as soon as possible for your business. And likewise for your agreements, these aren't things to rush into. Setting up contracts can have massive financial repercussions moving forward, which is why we always promote reading everything carefully before you sign it. Definitely take the time. Normally you'll have reply dates, and so you should take advantage of the time to carefully review and look at the fine print in your agreement. Kind of going off that into what we don't recommend, don't rush starting your business. You may have a great idea and you may have a passion and you want to hit the ground running with it, but definitely in today's business environment, you're always going to be safer off just taking a little bit extra time to make sure you know where you're running before you start running. Also, don't mix personal assets with business assets. You really should try to keep your business and personal lives as separate as possible. There are legal repercussions for doing that, even with a liability shield. If you start mixing personal assets in with your business, you could unintentionally lose your liability shield. Don't make assumptions when you're not sure. If you can't see the hardline rule, do not go with that gut feeling. You want to be able to make sure that you're acting on right information. Do not disclose your intellectual property to unrelated people before figuring it out. You could potentially lose your intellectual property rights just by disclosing them. And then also, don't rely on untrustworthy information online. There are plenty of government resources and other organizations that do provide good information, and so you should be looking out for these websites. You shouldn't. There are websites like LegalZoom that may seem like they're acting in your best interest, but a lot of these companies will oftentimes try to nickel and dime you for as much money as possible, and there are alternative ways that you could accomplish the same goals, but for far cheaper.
So we wanted to discuss some resources that are available, starting with the Weibling Entrepreneurship Clinic. Obviously, we're student attorneys there, and we love working with our clients. So our clients actually get their legal services free of charge. They are only responsible for paying for the hard fees that we face, so the filing fee with the state and things like that. We help clients on a number of issues. We've done a lot of trademarks this summer. We do a lot of forming entities, refining partnership agreements and operating agreements, just making sure those entities were formed properly in the first place, and if they weren't, we fix it. We've done some leasing. We've looked over some leases over this summer. We've done a lot of things. So we're available for a number of different reasons, and if you know someone, refer them to us because we love our clients. That's also the Nebraska Secretary of State website and the USPTO, which are great resources for forming an entity and for looking up IP matters. So the Secretary of State is a good place to look up those business names, like I said. And then here's a larger list of resources that are available in the community. I think now we are ready to open it up to Q&A. I do have a handout about our clinic for you guys too before you leave, so don't go running out. Is there any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
How many clients do you guys usually see?
So we each have a partner in the clinic, and I think we were all given four clients this summer. So those clients have a number of issues themselves, and you and your partner are assigned to those four clients to work through for the entire semester that you have them. And some of our clients will wrap up with us, and some of them will be continuing on in the fall with a new set of attorneys. So I guess we have 18-ish clients right now in total.
Cool.
Yeah. Did you have a question as well?
Actually, I have two.
Okay.
When a book is published and there's drawings in it, is it automatically protected because it's in the book, or does there have to be intellectual property? Does that have to be something else for the artist?
You mean the book for it?
Well, in my case, I'm working on publishing the book, and I have an artist that's bringing the illustrations. Are her illustrations protected when the book is published, or does she have to do something else to protect her intellectual
No,
property?
anything like she created is protected under copyright law. So like she just need to register when she wanted to sue someone. Yeah. So like for the book, there may be like a contract kind like with her. Yeah. So yeah.
My second question is, I have a logo for my new card. I should probably trademark that logo. Is that correct?
Even if you don't like register the trademark, you still get the like limited protection. But if it goes over the like other states, then it's better to like register in the federal registration, because like a limited protection just given within the small region that you use for the logo.
Okay, how expensive is that?
So it depends on the like types of mark, but for one like it's $250 for a class of like goods, or it can be like $350 per logo.
And you might normally you register for a trademark only in one class, but if you're across a broad range of markets, there might be a reason you'd have to register in more than one class for that trademark protection. So it's $250 for every class. So then you'd be paying more, but it just depends on your specific needs.
So I have a question for all of you. So you're in the Entrepreneurship Center, and is that what you want to do, like once you graduate, or what? How did you end up here in your collegiate experience?
I guess I'll go first. So I actually decided to come to UNL College of Law for one of the biggest reasons anyways, was the clinic. It's not available at all law schools. So the Entrepreneurship Clinic is pretty unique in that way, I would say, and it's the biggest learning experience I've had so far in law school. So it's been great. I have always wanted to go into like the business realm of law. I didn't really want to see the inside of a courtroom, so I just want to work directly with clients. I want to help their dreams become a reality. So I think that kind of led me to the clinic, and the clinic has reassured that for me personally.
Yeah, similarly, I actually didn't come to law school. I actually after like undergrad, so I worked in the construction industry for a while, and I worked with a lot of contracts. So that's how I got into got interested in law school, and so I just basically I came into the law school thinking about doing business law. Now I am kind of moving towards IP law. So I studied engineering in undergrad. So I'm thinking about the patent law, but still it involves a lot of business matters in thinking about strategic planning for IP stuff. So yeah, I love it. Yeah, entrepreneurship.
And as for me, I was a finance major for my undergraduate. I've always kind of had an interest just in the business field and sort of things. And so when I decided to come to law school, it just kind of made sense for me to take what my passion was and kind of jump in with business and law.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you for what you do, really. as I said when I started off the Perk Up meeting, we refer a lot of clients to you. So without that resource, our clients would have to pay for services. So thank you. Thank you, Brett, for heading that up. We really do appreciate that. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay.
Well, thank you guys for having us.
Yes.
We really enjoyed the opportunity.
And let's give a round of applause for and good luck with your future endeavors. So how long do you have left of your schooling?
Well, we're all entering our last year, so we
Oh,
all will
yay.
be graduating in May, I believe.
Congratulations. Best of luck.
Thank you. And I have this handout, so don't run off.